3, 4.
We just live right now, man. It's going down, excited for the season. You know, we coming off a playoff win. I mean, you know, we had a couple wins.
Hello and welcome to a Bucks Pacers Game 3 instant recap. This is Kyle Carr. I am back. I was finally able to sit down and watch the games. I'm not saying that was the reason why the Bucks won. I'm definitely not saying that. But I am joined by managing editor Van Fayaz. Van, how's it going?
Man, it's just so great when you podcast after a win. I didn't have to do it after game 2, but I had to do it after game 1, and I don't know, it kind of ruined my weekend. But now the Bucks aren't going to play until 8:30 Central Time on Sunday, so we kind of have a full weekend to just enjoy this victory, even though they're still down 1-2. It's just a lot better than what we were dealing with for the last several days this week, right?
I was going to say, like, when going into Game 4 2-1 is a lot better than going down 3-0. And the Milwaukee Bucks
then
did
your
win
season's
tonight.
over. Yeah.
Yeah, then I mean, pitchforks would have been out. But the Milwaukee Bucks won 117 to 101. The score, I would say, was a little bit more generous. It was dicey in the first half. Things weren't ideal. But the second half is really when Milwaukee turned it around. And it's quite something that Giannis scored 37 points, and that is not the most impressive 37-point performance of the night. Tonight was the Gary Trent Jr. game. 37 points, 9 of 12 from 3. 9 threes is a record that he is tied with Ray Allen for most three-pointers in a postseason game. Giannis did, again, 37 points, 12 rebounds, 6 assists. Damian Lillard did not do so hot shooting the ball. He was 2 of 12 from the field. However, we'll talk about it. There was another aspect of Dame's game that was really great. For the bench, yeah. For the bench, we had Bobby Portis. He played 32 minutes, had 10 points. He was a plus 15, so he was definitely around and grabbed the rebounds. And AJ Green, second half was strong. He had 12 points, 4 of 8 from 3. So those are the most noteworthy contributors for the Bucks. For the Pacers, Pascal Siakam was really the only thing keeping Indiana in it. He had 28 points, 12 of 19 from the floor. He was just hitting shot after shot. Aaron Nesmith started off well, ended with 18 points, and the most overrated player in the league, players' words, not mine, Tyrese Halliburton, 14 points, 10 assists, 7 rebounds, minus 23. That was the worst, plus minus out of everyone that played. So, where should we start with this game? I feel like we should touch on the first half because first half wasn't pretty.
Let's just give it like a little token mention here. I thought the first quarter was actually good. I mean, the big thing we wanted coming into this game was a lineup change, and it wasn't the lineup change that I think a lot of people wanted, which you wanted either one of these three, everyone, to be removed from the starting line. Brook Lopez, Kyle Kuzma, Taurean Prince. It ends up being Taurean Prince and being replaced by Gary Trent Jr. Now, I had been saying they should replace Kuzma. I mean, everyone had been saying they should replace Kuzma. You were saying it because we have eyes, and my preference was AJ Green because a lot of the best lineups the Bucks have run out this year, AJ Green has been a common thread in that. And interestingly, you, the resident owner of an AJ Green jersey, was like, nah, it should be Gary Trent Jr. And I'm like the biggest. It's interesting. You're the biggest AJ Green fan on the staff. I'm the biggest Gary Trent Jr. on the staff, I think. So we had opposing takes on this, but he ultimately plays for the guy we didn't want to come out of the game. We can talk about Kuzma, but obviously that was the right move. Gary Trent Jr. has the game of his life. We'll talk about him. Let's just touch on the first and second quarter. The first quarter I thought was pretty solid. Defensively, they did pretty well. But the second quarter, that was when some of the Pacers straight line drives started happening. There were a lot of times where especially Dame was getting switched on to Siakam. I remember saying this to Jack on our playback. Like, they could get any switch that they wanted, the Pacers. They could get any bigger player. Turner, certainly Siakam was the one benefited from it most, onto usually Dame Lillard, and they were making the Bucks pay for it. So defensively, that second quarter was pretty rough, but even worse, I thought, was just how completely stagnant the offense was. There was no movement off ball. Like, not only were they not moving the ball, but no one was moving around. In the first half, they had 9 assists on 18 field goals. They end up with 28 on 42 made field goals. So we're talking all of a sudden 19 assists in the second half. And their shooting numbers jump way up. Like, gee, I wonder why. But what did you see in, I think, that first quarter that I guess just gave you hope? Because the first quarter has just been such a disaster in this series for the Bucks, but it was not tonight.
Yeah, and it is funny. Yeah, even though I'm the biggest AJ Green fan, I acknowledge that he does have flaws, and he seems to have done better lately, but he was racking up a lot of dumb fouls. Like, there was a stretch where he was picking up a lot of stupid fouls, and a lot of times we're just like, why did he do
tonight?
That? No, not tonight. Just going.
Oh, yeah, not tonight.
No. This was like near the end of the regular season. Like, there was a stretch like early to mid-March where I was like,
sure, yeah.
Defensively,
tonight he got like the worst whistle ever.
Well,
I thought.
Yeah, I mean, the whistle was definitely whistling. There was a lot of fouls calling both ways, but that's why I went with Gary Trent Jr. because I was like, defensively, I just have more faith in him staying with either Halliburton or Nesmith. And what I think with the first half was they just defended better. I think that was the biggest thing. It was just the defense seemed more. There's more effort. There's more like athleticism. It felt as though this team figured out some, I don't know what it was, whether it's just more of an effort thing or just, I mean, the Pacers were struggling shooting the 3-ball in the first quarter, but it felt as though Milwaukee was not giving them too many easy looks, or if they did, they let certain players take those shots. It felt defensively, to me, that was the biggest difference because offensively, the ball was moving. Part of that was also Gary Trent Jr. started hitting some threes. Like, all right, cool. It was him and Giannis, and the Pacers had no answer. But then when it came to Milwaukee defending, it did at least seem as though there wasn't a lot that they were getting hurt by. I mean, yes, Aaron Nesmith was still hitting a couple pull-up jumpers, and he was really the only one on Indiana doing anything offensively. But I think it was just more of that. I think that was the biggest difference is you actually saw effort. You actually saw defense in the first quarter. And then the second quarter, I wouldn't necessarily say the defense was poor. It was just the offense was really bad. It was just, and that's when it got stagnant. And then it was kind of like, all right, maybe they haven't completely shaken off, the bad starts.
I think, what you say about the first quarter defensively, the Pacers, both teams, but the Pacers especially, were missing just some of the cleanest looks that you're going to see. And it wasn't until the second quarter that the Bucks started having to pay for that. Pacers are 2 for 13 from 3 in the first quarter, 5 for 10 in the second. And they shoot under 30% in the first quarter, over 50 in the second. Most of that was coming from Nesmith and Siakam, who combined for 19 of their 31 points. One thing I had been talking about, I think this may have been Finn Keel, who's one of our new contributors on staff. It was kind of his original idea, I guess. It's just defend the Pacers like a lot of teams defend the Bucks, where they're like, we're gonna live with whatever Giannis does. He can get his. Especially when Damian Lillard isn't playing, we're just gonna shut down everybody else.
Yeah.
So maybe the Bucks do that with Halliburton, like let him do what he wants. But we're gonna deal with everyone else. They weren't exactly doing that. I mean, Halliburton for this game ends up with 11 shots and 10 assists. He hasn't had like anywhere near an awesome offensive series. I mean, he's been fine. It's Siakam who's hurt them, which we saw that last year in games 1 and 2. We just see that like against the Bucks, he somehow turns into Larry Bird, and he'll make. I mean, some of the jumpers he made, the degree of difficulty tonight was just insane. So he was maybe the guy they were doing that to. Like you said, Nesmith was big in the first half. He has 15 of his he ends up with just I think 17.
Yeah, he had 18
on the
points.
night.
Yeah, so he had 3 points in the second half.
But yeah, maybe that's like that was maybe by design. It's like, all right, we'll live with that. As long as Halliburton isn't hurting us. And I mean, Siakam wasn't, I don't think necessarily killing them by then. I feel like Siakam was probably a lot better when the Bucks were just trying to hold them off in the second half. But to me, and I know you'll agree with this too, the biggest difference between the halves was not anything they adjusted defensively or just the Pacers starting to brick shots, which they were in the first quarter, but they were, and they started to do again the third quarter. But I don't like. I think some of that was a little bit luck for the Bucks. Like they were giving up still some good looks towards the start of that third quarter, but a massive switch offensively that they flipped. They scored 21 points in the second quarter and 39 points in the third quarter. And Gary Trent has 18 in the third quarter. He hits 5 of 7 shots. All of those were threes. And I think there was one key adjustment that happened at half that caused them to win this game. And it was evident pretty soon in that, after a few minutes in that third quarter, once Kyle Kuzma was subbed out of the game, for one. But I mean, it was Giannis all of a sudden reverting back to the point Giannis type of guy we saw for the final few weeks of the regular season, where there's no Damian Lillard. Giannis runs the offense. He's racking up triple doubles 4 out of 5 nights. He's getting to double figures in assists in these games, some of them before rebounds, or he's missing a triple double with rebounds because he's getting the ball to his teammates at the right times in the right places. In the first half, he just was not passing the ball so much. He was trying to do too much. He wasn't over dribbling as much as he was just forcing the issue and trying to take on Pacers defenders who were already set. Like if Giannis, we saw him a couple times going at guys when the Pacers were descending on him, like the Bucks are moving in transition and the Pacers haven't set their defense yet. So they're all kind of scrambling. Giannis can take advantage of that and get around guys. But he was also trying to attack guys who were flat-footed. And that resulted in a number of turnovers. There were a bunch of possessions in a row where, and that was where the Pacers were able to get their largest lead of the game, get up to double figures. And then the third quarter, it flipped around completely. He realized what he needed to do. What do you think? What do you think might have been said to him at half, or do you think it was just something he realized?
I think it was a little bit of both. I'm sure there was a conversation of like, hey, you do need to get the other guys involved, because that was a lot of the issue in the second half. Was Giannis was just not trusting anyone that he was on the floor with. And then even at the start of the third quarter, it was kind of the same thing where it's like, okay, you get the turnover and that leads to Siakam getting the basket. It's like, all right, like that was the first thing right after half. So then you're thinking, I don't know, but I think it was a combination of Gary Trent Jr. was doing what was necessary and getting himself in spots so that Giannis could get him the ball. But also, I think there was a part where Giannis just realized, I can get to the free throw line. They're calling the fouls. I can get to the line and I can charge at them. And we saw it like halfway through the third quarter where it was like, okay, Giannis is going in, gets called, there's some shooting fouls that favor him. He makes the free throw. Then it just seemed like it was either that or Gary Trent Jr.'s hit. That Gary Trent Jr. 3. So I think it was a combination of the Pacers defense not being able to stop Giannis's penetration to the rim, which then allowed Giannis to make the smart pass. And some of those were still a little bit it was like both out of control, but because it's Giannis, it's like he knew exactly what he was trying to do. So I don't know how to explain it. But like there were times where Giannis looked like he was flying out of bounds, but still made the right pass.
Sure.
But I think it was just a lot of that, just more movement around the perimeter. And then when you have someone like Gary Trent Jr. shooting as well, you still have AJ Green. Bobby Portis was able to be in the right spots. There were a couple of times where he would get into the dunker spot or he would be able to cut to the rim. So I think Giannis realizing all of that and getting the spots that he wants to, and then making the smart pass, and then the other players actually rewarding that was huge.
Yeah, Giannis ends up 9 of 10 at the line. He's 5 for 5 in the third quarter. He has 11 points there, but outscored by Gary. And we'll talk. We should talk more about Gary. We should also talk about AJ Green, who AJ Green, just to put it in perspective, coming into the fourth quarter, he played 16 minutes, only made one shot. He was 1 of 4 from deep. And this was coming off a game where he only played 13 minutes for some reason. In the fourth quarter tonight, he has 9 points. He hits 3 of 4, including one basically logo 3 that was kind of the dagger tonight. That made it a 20-point game late. Gary Trent made one right before that, which we thought was the dagger.
Well, I thought that was the dagger. And then I was like, right. Okay, no. And then I was like, oh, this is the dagger.
Then the Pacers, I think they scored the next point. They got a 3 back on the other end, but then it's like, all right, night with that AJ Green shot.
Mm-hmm.
In the third quarter, all right, so let's talk a little bit about Kuzma, but I will preface it with saying in the third quarter, the Bucks are down 10 at half. They were even after 1. They lose the second quarter by 10. So immediately, well, I guess not immediately. After a couple minutes in the quarter, they go on what ends up being an 8. They go on an 8-1 run that ties the game with 8 minutes left in the frame. But from there, they go back and forth a bit, and the Pacers, the Bucks have a slight lead, and then the Pacers get it back. Then at the 5:30 mark or so, actually it was a little earlier than that, the 7:30 mark. I'm sorry, that's when, I'm doing my math wrong. The 6:30 mark. That is when AJ Green enters the game for Damian Lillard. He was having a tough sequence at the start of the second quarter. Kevin Porter enters for Kyle Kuzma. So we're seeing now, as Bobby Portis had already been in this lineup that we saw closing those games against Detroit and Minnesota at the end of the year, which is Portis, Giannis, AJ Green, Gary Trent, and Kevin Porter Jr. That lineup through the 125 mark gets the Bucks up 11. And then Giannis exits the game. He's looking pretty tired. Like he looked tired at various points tonight. And we have another sequence, as we did in the first half too, where neither Dame or Giannis are on the floor. This time it doesn't last as long, thankfully. Giannis got like about 8 minutes off in the first half. He had 2 fouls, but also I thought that was a bit long. This time Giannis re-enters the game at the 8:36 mark of the fourth quarter. The Bucks are up 10. They managed to extend their lead a little bit. They led by 11 at the end of the fourth. They got up to 15 somehow, thanks to AJ Green largely, without Giannis or Dame on the floor. But then, Dame did re-enter the game at the start of the fourth quarter. So it was a brief part at the end of the third quarter, but they still were able to hold serve there. So then the lineup is the 3 guys, AJ, Gary, Bobby Portis with Giannis, but also Dame is in there. And that lineup, once Giannis re-enters the game for Jericho Sims, they rattle off a 10-0 run. So it's a 20-point game with 5 minutes left. Jarris Walker is coming into the game. We saw Johnny Furphy and Tony Bradley enter with 3:33 left. It was all done and dusted then. So clearly, the lineups can work with Damian Lillard in place of Kevin Porter, and the one with Kevin Porter, even though he's still really struggling, and he struggled tonight on both ends of the floor. He still is. He's -5. He is 0 for 5 from the floor. He has 6 assists, 4 rebounds, but still some ill-advised shots and some defensive breakdowns. But these lineups still work, and they came after Kyle Kuzma was removed from the game. So let's just talk about him briefly, because it was I thought it was ugly at the start, but then it was much uglier at the start of the second half.
I was going to say, the start of the first half was rough. I would say the start of the second half was worse because it was all the bad elements of Kyle Kuzma. And it's just, you're sitting there like, why? And we already knew, like, we've seen the first 2 games, not good. We saw the start of this game. It's like, at least he's trying defensively. There is effort on defense, so you're not as like, Urgh. But then they got to the third quarter, it's like, there is no effort. The defensive effort is not there. He is actively sabotaging the offense. I got to the point where I said, just put in Andre Jackson Jr. because Andre Jackson Jr. offensively is going to give you about the same as Kyle Kuzma. But Andre Jackson Jr. is not going to actively sabotage it when he has the
harm
ball
you.
in his hand.
Sabotage is definitely the word.
Yeah, so there was always that aspect of it, but I think it also was just like the lineups. It was more Giannis and Bobby as the bigs. We didn't even see that much Brook either, so you had more Giannis and Bobby, like big man rotation. We had a little bit of Jericho Sims, but I think the lack of Kyle Kuzma was the biggest thing because it allowed Milwaukee's offense to flow better. I think defensively, you didn't lose too much. There was one little bit of a stretch in like the beginning of the fourth, like midway through the fourth quarter, where you're kind of thinking, all right, Indiana got it to 10. There's about it was about 8.5 minutes left. You're like, okay.
That's when Giannis checked back in.
That was when Giannis checked back in. So then I was like, okay, feel a little bit better. But it was like both teams were unable to hit shots. So then it was like, but then thankfully Milwaukee was able to get the offense going again. But yeah, I think like at this point, I don't know how you can continue playing Kyle Kuzma. I don't care, Doc Rivers. Like, you can't do it. You cannot continue to play him. You have to change that lineup. And if that means putting Taurean Prince back in Kyle Kuzma's place, that's fine. If you even want to go Bobby, if you want to keep the jumbo big aspect, I guess. But I just don't see how you watch this game and think that playing Kyle Kuzma in game 4 he's going to get better or he's going to turn it around.
Taurean Prince, who's the one removed from the starting lineup tonight, plays only 3 minutes, just late first quarter. I think he maybe even was in there a little bit at the start of the second. I remember at half looking, he was the only one who had a positive plus minus on the Bucks.
Still ended with the +3.
he stayed there. He did not play the rest of the game. Kuzma, I thought, he did make a couple nice passes. That was about the extent of what he did that helped the team. I mean, you see -1 and 4 for 9 points, and you think that's okay. 3 rebounds, 2 assists. The 2 turnovers he had were in the first quarter, and that first quarter run where it's just like, man, he's get this dude off the floor immediately. Like, we were saying that within the first 3 minutes. And then when the third quarter started, we were saying it within the first minute, and somehow the Bucks, like I said, when he exits the game, that's where they make their run. They're probably, unfortunately for us, they're probably going to keep playing him. Like Jack was saying on our playback, it's kind of political at this point. Like, dude is I guess he's the 4th highest paid player on the team, but I think that's the only thing that's keeping him in there, because no, he's not doing much defensively. Like, I don't see him. You look at him on paper and think, okay, yeah, he's someone I would trust to check Siakam for a few possessions. No, the Bucks are the Pacers are getting whatever switch they want for Siakam. And when I actually thought, defensively in that second quarter, the Bucks were switching so much. And when they were running a zone, they were running it really high. Like, they were putting the guards usually the farthest they would go would be like the 3-point arc. That's about as far as you go in a 2-3 zone period. But usually they're starting near the elbow. Sometimes they come up to the arc. I saw possessions where they were like 4 or 5 feet past the arc, like towards midcourt. And that was causing a bunch of issues where guys would, the Pacers would have open guys on the wing or in the corner, and then the Bucks have to make some sort of decision, and they were not. It's like they didn't make the right one, clearly. But in but the switching was also, I think the Pacers were destroying them on the switches. Yeah. What they found in the second half, they somehow they were able to switch guys back. I saw a lot of times in the second half where the Pacers were getting Siakam on the Lillard, but then very quickly the Bucks were able to reverse that. They're able to get Giannis back on him. It wasn't hurting them. And then the on-ball defense just from everyone was just so much better, including Damian Lillard.
I was just about to say, I think one of the biggest things for why the zone was working better and the switching, this was Damian Lillard's best defensive game as a Buck, and potentially ever.
Easily. It's got to be ever. I mean, I said it like this is. I'm sure the first time. Like Jack was like, this is the first time anyone's ever said that. This is the first time I think he's impacted a game more defensively than he has offensively. Yeah. He ends up with 2 steals, 2 blocks. The Pacers, Gary Trent, by the way, 4 steals. Pacers are throwing a lot of balls away in the passing lanes. And even though the turnover battle finished pretty even each side, the Pacers had 14 and the Bucks had 13. The Bucks made the Pacers pay a lot more. Points off turnovers for the Bucks, 22 as opposed to 13 for the Pacers. Giannis, beneficiary of that. But Damian Lillard, the blocks he had, I thought he should have been credited with a third. There was one late in the game, but he blocked Pascal Siakam in this game.
Yeah, that's when I was like, oh.
That was crazy. That was crazy. He got up in the air before Siakam did. He got all ball. And it's incredible. He's 2 for 12 from the floor. Clearly his shot is not back yet. 7 points, 5 assists. He does hit one big 3 in the fourth quarter that creates some distance, but is not by any means hurting the Bucks in this game, even though he's not shooting the ball. It's just not something I had on my bingo card that like Damian Lillard would be a big part of why they succeeded defensively tonight because of defensive playmaking, not as much through like he's locking someone up Drew Holiday style, but he stripped guys, he blocked guys. I can't say enough good things about how he showed up tonight on the defensive end.
Yeah. I feel like that was the biggest thing is he was able to it was like active hands. He was able to be disruptive. And no, he wasn't locking anyone up, but he was also not getting absolutely cooked like we would have expected. And Indiana was targeting him. Indiana was going at him, which is why he, got some of the fouls that he did. I know like the fourth one, it was kind of I think it was Nesmith got it and just went straight to the rim. I think Dame was like kind of backpedaling. So that was kind of like a foul just to prevent a shot going up. And,
that was what he was having to do sometimes.
Right. And that was
especially when Siakam was on him.
And that was after a missed 3 in which Indiana immediately went into transition. So I think it is one of those where, Dame's defense, he was not getting exposed and he was making the plays that he needed to. And I think that was the biggest thing for him. And part of why, Indiana was very loose with the ball. I mean, Gary Trent Jr. had a couple times where Nesmith was going at him or Nembhard was going at him. He was just able to poke the ball away and resulted in a steal So I think, are we ever going to see this kind of performance from Dame defensively again? Probably not. But at least for this game, you didn't need Dame's offense. You needed him to be you needed him to be okay defensively, and he passed that with flying colors.
Much more than okay. I think, as much as we saw him struggle especially in the early third quarter and before, I knew that they would have to bring him back into the game, especially to start the fourth quarter. Like, if anything, he's a decoy. He was doing a bit of that in game one. The gravity he has, it's something that other team has to respect, and it'll create some space on the floor. But I also thought, he's going to make at least one tonight. Like, he's still got some in his quiver. Yeah, he starts off 1 for 8 from the floor, but that 3 hit at the start of the fourth quarter, really important. I mean, the man had a blood clot. He is a miracle. It is a miracle that he's playing basketball right now. Some people weren't giving him a lot of grace after game 2 just because he struggled so much offensively. And he's still struggling offensively, but he's not hurting this team. And I hope on Sunday we start seeing like playoff Damian Lillard. He played fewer minutes. He plays 37 minutes, I guess, in game 1. He ends up with 32 tonight. A little bit more rest, but he was playing the important minutes. He's going to have to continue doing that. And if he just is able to shoot like his regular season percentages. That's probably going to be enough for the Bucks to win a game if they're making some of these other calls like they made tonight, especially with the lineups. So I think, just a really good effort, like on both sides of the ball, especially in the second half. It's a 7-game series. 2 games are really, as we know, like that feels very short, and like you can forget about that almost immediately. Like, remember in 2019 when the Bucks went up 2-0, that didn't matter. Like, as soon as game 3 was over, quite honestly, and after game 4, it didn't matter at all. So there's going to be a game 5 now.
Yeah,
hopefully a game 6.
And I was going to say, the Bucks are going to need Dame offensively because, as I'm sure Gary Trent Jr. will still be a positive, but to expect him to hit 9 threes again might be asking a little too much. So we are hoping that Dame is able to turn around offensively. But game 4 is going to be this Sunday night at 8:30 p.m. in Milwaukee. So it's going to be a while. It's going to be a late night. So we hope it can end the night, end the weekend on a high.
If anyone in Milwaukee sees Gary Trent out in the city, just ever, but certainly like in the near future, buy him dinner. He should never have to pay for a meal or a drink in the city of Milwaukee again. This is a legendary performance of his tonight.
It is. Also, give him like a little scooter or something. Don't let him not put his stress on his shin, because something. He left the game with the shin injury.
He left the game after what was it? It was just like 5 or 6 minutes, and he was cooking from the jump. But then he goes back to the locker room, and it looked like he was favoring his ankle a bit. Like, oh no, not this! But very quickly came up shin contusion. He's probable to return. He was in there to start the second quarter. So ice that shin up, Gary. But also, like, he's earned himself a nice meal or something, from courtesy of whatever restaurant he ends up at.
Get him a meal, get him some ice, get him a scooter or something so he can rest. Yeah. But that will be it for our Game 3 instant reaction. Make sure to catch us on the playback for Game 4. We will be there for that, along with another reaction pod after Game 4. And also make sure to check us out at brewhoop.com for game recap and the preview. So we thank you once again for listening, and we'll talk to you later.